Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. We are really excited here at MetaRouter to be introducing our summer release, really focused on enhancing the flexibility and efficiency for enterprise level data management. And I know historically, when you hear flexibility, there might be some caveats that come with what that means and how you actually can make a flexible tool efficient in how you're using it and what you're going to do with it within your organization. So today we're really going to unpack what that means and how the features in our new summer release are really going to help with that data management at that big kind of large scale enterprise level. So to kick things off, let's introduce ourselves quickly. Hi, I'm Michelle Nieberning, the Director of Product Marketing here at MetaRouter, joined today with Dylan Paul, our Principal Product Manager. Dylan, if you want to do a quick introduction.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining. As Michelle mentioned, my name is Dylan Paul. I sit on our product team, so heavily involved in a lot of the features and functionality we're going to walk through today.
I love it. So yeah, to kind of kick things off, like I said, what really does flexibility mean and really why is that important? And we've heard a lot of different things here because I think two things come up a lot when you're thinking about enterprise level data management. One, either the tool isn't flexible at all, right? There's rigid schemas. It's hard to integrate different tools. It's hard to switch tools based on what you're using. So we hear quite a bit of that. Or also, there are tools that are flexible but incredibly hard to set up, or if to actually achieve that level of flexibility is really hard, really time consuming. You're kind of doing the same things over and over to embrace that flexibility of that tool. So a couple things here in terms of why we think flexibility is so important and why we're introducing these features to really lean into the flexibility side of a data integration routing tool. The first one here, of course, is changing needs, right? I mean, there's so many new technologies coming up every single day, and depending on what you're using different tools for, it may change, right? You might want to use a different analytics tool or a different AI tool, whatever it might be. And previously, when you have that kind of data management foundation, that initial layer that you need to pump, data into tools like this, making those switches is really hard. If you want to swap out an analytics tool because there's a new or better one or something has changed, your needs have changed, it can be really hard. So as need change, we want to develop a platform that can adapt to what tools you're using and what you need it to do. With that as well comes really avoiding vendor lock-in. I know there's some tools out there that really kind of keep you within the ecosystem and they do a good job of it. But again, as things change, as maybe costs go up, etc., you may want to look at a flexible tool that can really avoid that vendor lock-in. So by really remaining technology agnostic, you not only get not stuck in a single ecosystem, which can lead to higher costs and sometimes reduced negotiating leverage when you're up for renewal, but that kind of independence also really allows you to switch between vendors based on not just cost, but like performance, compatibility. If you are building a composable stack, this really plays a role as well. To really, what tools do you need to optimize the stack overall? And that's where that plays in as well. And then finally, flexibility and choice really allows you to customize your solution based on your specific requirements and processes, right? So as you want to innovate, as your processes change, as maybe your teams change, and as you want to bring your teams forward in innovation, this really allows you to do that as well. I think with the complexity that we're seeing in tech stacks and how things are evolving, you want to be able to innovate, but it's not always easy for all the reasons we just mentioned. So the features in our summer release really help with that flexibility to make sure that you're able to adapt quickly, you're not locked into any specific vendors, and then you can really, customize and innovate at a really strong level to keep things going in your business. But I want to call out, I think, again, no surprise here, like flexibility often comes at a cost. In my previous roles in tech, flexibility is almost kind of like a scary word because people hear flexible and the offset of that is, oh my gosh, what do I have to do to actually, achieve that level of flexibility or take advantage of the flexibility that tooling has. So I like, we just had the Olympics and I like to think about it this way, right? Is like you see these people, they're so flexible. They've done so much work, so much training over years and years of practice to actually get here. So when someone's, talking about flexibility, it's like, what what do you have to do to get to this level of flexibility? And oftentimes, again, that requires really, really high levels of work and time and money to actually achieve that level of flexibility. So it's something to think about because we, aren't sugarcoating the fact that flexibility often comes at a cost, but what we're trying to do is really make it easier to be flexible and more efficient for you using the flexibility within our features. So the way I like to think about it is there's kind of this expectation of when you buy a flexible tool, what you're hoping to achieve, and then the reality of that not quite fitting what you expect when you're purchasing a flexible tool. And we're really looking to overcome that by doing a lot of the heavy lifting and or helping guide you through the process of how to take advantage of a flexible tool such as MetaRouter with the summer product release. So we've really kind of done the hard training for you, putting the blood, sweat, and tears into what these products are and what they can offer for your organization so that the quality of the data is better, the efficiency, the level that you can actually embrace this flexibility is better, and then the cost ultimately goes down as well. So let's get into why we built these features, right? What have we heard that have actually pushed us to release features such as this, right? So one of the things we've heard is the stress around data preparation. It's really, really hard to do custom transformations, filters, mapping, etc. So Dylan, I'd love to hear kind of from our first key feature here around data preparation, what we've heard as to why we built this.
Yeah, of course. It really came from the varying needs of like multiple enterprises having just like such varied schemas. Like their websites are configured in a certain way. They have events, different types of events, or the naming conventions are different. And really, when that data is then being processed through the MetaRouter data pipeline, there's also additional needs that happen that are very nuanced as well. So I think in order to be able to satisfy all these varying asks and requirements for either data schemas or maybe data obfuscation, or we need to like remove PII from only these particular pages, or we need to transform these style of events into this other shape as well. We really needed to just provide a modular and configurable tool that can kind of fit into all of these nuanced use cases, but in a way that wasn't just, as you've been talking about, just overwhelming and really added more to the workflow than it was really kind of the work into the workflow did not meet the value that was going to be received. So that was really the nucleus of this feature ad.
I love it. Yeah, I think what we hear all the time is the time that it takes to do these kinds of preparation and transformation can take a lot of time. And if it goes wrong, the cleanup process is even worse. So I think keeping that in mind as one of the first things of the summer release that we really considered when making this more efficient for teams, but providing that flexibility, as you mentioned, to adapt to what those kind of nuances and specific requirements are.
Yeah, one of the kind of very specific customer use cases we had here is we had one of our enterprise customers needed very specific data transformations need to be applied across every single one of those one of their egress integrations. However, the need for the transformation on each integration was slightly different based on some of the consumer behavior on the site. So what we were having to do is go through and create logic at each one of those egress integrations and then just run. So then we're having to duplicate work across these. Our testing is a lot more intensive. And now what we're able to do with kind of our modular system is we can go and define these once, and then we can point it to where we want it in the MetaRouter lifecycle to apply that logic and change. So it streamlined the work for our customer and our customer's team dramatically.
And I think for that too, like the scale, the volume that was coming through for that was pretty crazy too. So
Yep,
yeah,
very significant.
between pipelines and volume, it's
Yep.
Kind of the prime example of efficiency and flexibility working together. Awesome. So we have data preparation. Let's talk about data integration. So integration is always a hot topic, right? I think every day we have new integration requests coming in and we're constantly building new ones. Not only that, but There, I think, is also the traditional method that comes with this, and the potential delays that not only come with the routing piece of that, but also building some of these new integrations, right? So would love to hear kind of a background on what really inspired the data integration layer of what we're talking about today.
Yeah, this is a great one. Anybody who's worked in the advertising or marketing technology space is painfully aware of the integration dilemma. There are, I mean, at this point, we're probably at 9,000 plus MarTech tools. And again, kind of going back to this kind of nuanced kind of narrative, enterprises do not have the same tech stack. You're going to have a variety of tools being used. So when you start to look at these different enterprises, this tech stack that creates their whole marketing tech stack is so different. So technology vendors like MetaRouter have a really, really big problem there because their requirement is to help these companies pipe data efficiently. But then that requires that we build integrations to each of these tools. Now we're talking about 9,000 plus tools. You just start to get into the realm of, impossible. Unless you just had an enormous engineering team that was just constantly building integrations, maintaining integrations, and then also applying the changes that these enterprises also require. I've had multiple enterprises use the same integration, but in completely different ways because their end use case of that tool is very specific to the needs of that business. So you just kind of get into this wheel where you can never really fully provide the end customer what they need. And so we needed to go into something that was a little bit more flexible and configurable for the customer. So we're not just trying to build all these integrations for our customers. We're going to give them the tooling that they can easily go in, and will help always in configuring, constructing, and building to like maybe some of these more nuanced tools that are not widely adopted, or even like some interior systems that they've built themselves. So yeah, really came out of the need that just data connectivity is a very widespread problem, and we need a better way to solution this than just building point integrations and then throwing that up on an integration page and saying we have 300 plus integrations. Like that's just not helpful for today's enterprises.
Like, what are you using for? What is that integration actually?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a great point. And I think for me, what excites me most about this, and we'll get into it a little bit as well, is this is really the first step for, build your own integrations internally. So really, like Dylan said, really providing the UI to actually, build it yourself, but with that guided expertise to make sure that, for the reason that you need the integration, but also when you need the integration, right? I think all too often we see a ticket kind of go into the ether and that, just lives there. And so giving you the tools that you need to really do that yourself as well. And then the last piece here, and we'll get into some of the more specifics of how this plays out in terms of the features that we're launching, but identity syncing. I think this is like something I hear all the time. Identity is a hot topic, and there's kind of an interesting nuance between identity resolution, identity syncing, which I feel like it's a whole nother topic. But when you think about, okay, how are you connecting that with some of your downstream tools, analytics, et cetera, when it comes to identity is really the idea behind this identity seeking piece. So yeah, love your thoughts, Dylan.
Yeah. I mean, this falls into a very similar narrative as our last two. And I think given our sync injector being one of the primary value adds that we deliver to the market, one of the things we started seeing more and more of is not just the use of, say, like a Facebook ID or a Google ID or a Trade Desk ID being used in those specific solutions. We've seen the rise of like internal IDs. So these are IDs that these enterprises are setting for their own customers, and then they're using those in their analytics systems. They might be even transitioning and using those in their email service provider. So identity has also become a much broader topic, just like integrations, where identity is not just living at either, right on your mobile app or on your website or via the different vendors. We now have abstract, like smaller vendors providing identity. We've also got internal tools. And so being able to connect into those systems and grab that comprehensive view of your customer from an identity standpoint to see where they have been ID'd on different systems, that's really the functionality we wanted to unlock, so that you can always make sure you have the necessary ID on that user to use in a variety of different systems. Again, whether it's you're doing some analytics in Tableau, or you're doing your some of your ad campaigns through Google or Meta, etc. So just really expanding out the breadth of identity that we can grab, and also doing it in a way that you want it to be done as well. It's no longer about, hey, we've built the solution and you have to force our solution into your workflow. We can build something that is tailor-made for your workflow without a whole lot of effort.
And I think you kind of mentioned this too, is what really excites me about this is when we talk about like the flexibility and the customization piece, like you said, like the internal tooling. Like I know we have quite a few customers that have their own like ad platforms, advertising IDs that they want to use, and we can, meet those needs as well. So from external to internal as well, whatever that specific proprietary potential, information is, we can work through that too.
Yeah. One of our customers, they primarily use their internal ID across all of their systems. So they have an internal API that just is housing all of those IDs. With this tooling, we're able to do a round trip sync to grab that and include that as part of their payload. So now they have the rich context being captured at an event level by MetaRouter, along with all of their other identities across their ad and marketing ecosystem. But we're also kind of tying in their ID as kind of that primary ID along with all of that rich context. So it's just been a fantastic solution for them.
I love it. So really a quick recap, and then we'll dig into how some more examples of how customers are using it. What does it look like? So we were really mindful with this release, kind of in those 3 different stages. You have the preparation with what we're calling our global transformation layer. We have the data integration with what we're calling custom integrations, and then identity synchronization, which is BYO syncs for us. So build your own syncs, and we'll talk about exactly what this means and how some of our customers are using it. So like I said, when we're thinking about that theme of flexibility and efficiency, what does that mean for these 3 features that we're launching with the summer release, right? So we have the global transformation layer, which really allows you to create and build these reusable LUA models for versatile data transformation, also filtering and mapping across the integrations and pipelines that you're using. And then we have custom integrations, which really, like Dylan was mentioning earlier, it connects to really any endpoint, right? So it really helps with where you want that data to go and how, like what you need that integration to do. What is that use case for how you need that integration to work? And then finally, BYO syncs, which again, various methods to connect to the custom or potentially unsupported identity services that other tools can't quite sync with for that more, I guess, really comprehensive view, depending on how you want to handle that identity as a broader term. So let's dig into it. All right, Dylan, we're talking about global transformation layer off the start. Let's get into it.
Yeah, awesome. This one, I loved working on this project. It addresses so many use cases. It is a more of a kind of technical first. Our initial release is a technical first solution. So what we have is we have our own command line interface that you can go into, and you're able to go and define, like, this is really first phase of our kind of the transformation library that we're building out. So the first step is these Lua modules, as Michelle mentioned. So Lua is an incredibly fast programming language. It's why we use it, because we're able to perform these types of transformations and data manipulation jobs in flight. So we are not doing any of this at a rest state. Everything is in transit. So now what you're able to do is have a space inside of your MetaRouter cluster where you can go and define these Lua modules. And this can be anything from changing the name of an event to filtering out bot traffic. And that's really one of the big first use cases we saw with this is, instead of just having a point solution that was more about, okay, I want you to just filter out bot traffic at the point of collection. Now what I can do is I can go and define a module using Lua to go and capture that bot traffic. And then I can go point that at the beginning. So at the beginning of our MetaRouter lifecycle. And so instead of just having a point solution, we've now put this under an umbrella within inside of our transformation library using our Lua modules. And then additionally, we kind of touched on this previously, but I want to go a little bit further. the work that was going into this transformation. So what was happening is we were having to obfuscate certain data properties for certain events on certain pages for certain users. So you've got layers of complexity there. Again, when you're able to do this from a scripting language, it's not bad, but when you have to do that across multiple different integrations, it can get really, really tricky because you're having to copy some of the logic, but then change it a little bit. And you just have to have an incredible level of detail, and you're introducing human error. What we've now done, again, with this library is we've looked at our system and needs as a modular approach. So now I can go and make these, go define these rules and this logic about what data should be obfuscated on what page, for what user, for what property, a single time in our library. And then I can call on that module at my integration level. So the other piece that we thought about with these is, so we have this global transformation library with these Lua modules built inside of it. And now you can just call on those at any point in the meta-router lifecycle. So it's not now, they don't just live at integrations, or they don't just live at the point of collection, or they don't live in kind of that middle in transit layer. You can make sure that these modules get called and then applied at any point in that lifecycle. And so that's why we're kind of like, those Lua modules is step one in what will become a much more robust set of features for customers to just really have a fine-grained view, management, and ownership over what they need to happen with their customer data.
And I think a couple things worth calling out there that I really appreciate what you're saying is like that control over transformations, that human error, kind of taking away that potential human error, right? Like when you're looking at some of the large scale data transformations and integrations that we're doing, that becomes a huge concern, right? And trying to figure out what needs to happen to make sure that that's all accurate, that's
Yep.
happening in the right way is really important. And I think the bot filtering thing too is a really interesting use case. One of the ways that our current customers are using the global transformation piece, because if you're, thinking about, we have customers that pay a lot of money for ad spend, for example, and you don't want to waste that ad spend with, bot traffic, things like that. So a really good way to do that on a large scale.
Yeah, I can see the other area where I can see this becoming incredibly valuable is just the time to value that our analytics and kind of data science teams are going to start to see. So traditionally with systems like MetaRouter and kind of the data routing set of solutions, when you're piping in some of this information into, say, your data warehouse or your analytics tool, or kind of one of those style of systems, this workflow or this job to be done is sometimes kind of the first thing that some of those like analytics professionals, data scientists are going to have to do themselves. What we can do now is we can make sure that that data comes a little bit more ready and like a ready state, so they can start to get to work a lot sooner versus having to do, okay, now I've got to manipulate this, I'm going to change this, I've got to run this cron job. And so they might have a lot of that already built out, but it'll be so much nicer if they can just have that data show up and be ready and get to work doing the thing that they probably enjoy doing a lot more than just data cleansing and preparation. So
yeah, well said. And that hence the flex efficiency piece, right? I mean, that's a huge time suck, and I don't think the teams enjoy doing that anyway. So.
No, it was the least favorite part when I was in the data analytics space, was just getting the data ready. I just wanted it to be ready so I could just start querying and understanding like what is the valuable insights that we can pull from this data.
So this is really built out of PTSD from
this
from
was a 100% a selfish project. Yeah, no.
Exactly. I love it. All right, let's jump into custom integrations here. So I know we've talked about a lot of the kind of potentials of what you can do here and why the broad term integrations and is so much more than just how many integrations you have on a web page, right? So let's talk about how some of our customers are using this and really what some of the key piece parts here. I think for me it's like really helping with the complexity of setting up these crazy integrations and just specifying an endpoint, you're kind of good to go.
Yeah, this the evolution of this particular functionality is going to be, I think, kind of unmatched inside of the MetaRouter ecosystem. And I don't say that lightly, because the integration needs from an egress standpoint as I alluded to earlier, just continue to compound and become more and more complicated. So being able to now package up some of the infrastructure that we have built to create these integrations and now provide that to our customers in an easy way to configure and then deploy themselves really empowers them now to own their own kind of integration infrastructure. And not in a way like, to your, you were saying flexibility is kind of a scary term. What I just said there is like, own your data integration infrastructure. Like, I think most people listening are like, I don't, that sounds awful. It's being done in, you still get to leverage all of the foundational work that we've put in. We just now will have a UI that allows you to just configure and say, okay, I need to hit this endpoint with these data events. Here's my authentication, and now go. Because at the end of the day, that is the integration building process anyway. And then we also have some testing capabilities, which will allow you to then make sure that these integrations that are being configured are also going to work. So our first release of this is more of like a direct open API, like open HTTP endpoint that you can pipe information to. There is a little bit of kind of more technical configuration that's needed for this V1, but we're going to progress this so that we can have a much more robust kind of UI-centric build and design. And so we're actually in the kind of build phase and testing out some of the concepts in this as well. But we can do this today and allow you to just connect to any of these open HTTP endpoints that you need to get your data to.
Yeah, definitely a good teaser. And I would say too, I think one of the things that we're hearing more and more about, another maybe broad term that needs to be, reined in a little bit, is this idea of real time. I think one of the things that we do really well here and, gets pulled into this sort of new feature is really pushing the data as soon as events occur. So everything, all the connected systems get updated in real time. So the delays that you might have with like traditional data pulling doesn't exist within this kind of ecosystem. So I think that's something that some of our customers are really excited about too.
Yeah. We released this, and I think within 2 days we had a pretty large use case getting applied, which we have one of our customers needs to port information to about 150 different destinations. Some of those destinations are the same. So it's, the same CM360 or it's the same trade desk, but we've got slightly different configurations or endpoints that this data needs to go to for different teams and needs. In a traditional integration infrastructure standpoint that you would see with many other data routing tools, this would be quite the undertaking. You have a lot of custom work. You're basically having to reconfigure your integration and then duplicate that in the code base, and it would be challenging. What we're able to do within a few configuration tweaks is now set up that, and we were able to very quickly facilitate the delivery of that data, as Michelle was saying, because you're just getting the Metadata infrastructure. It is a real-time tooling. We're able to then get that data connected into those 150 different destinations with those minor customizations without it taking weeks, months to configure and go back and forth on.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of hype for that exact reason. These kind of large scale projects become much easier, much simpler. So it's really, really exciting stuff to see here. Yeah, like Dylan was saying, it's kind of V1 of what our BYO integrations broader UI is going to be. So a little teaser of what we can do now and where we're going as well. And then last but not least, we have BYO sync. So we talked about this idea of identity and really understanding, helping our customers, I think, increase, like you said, the breadth of IDs that we can collect and assigning to those payloads. So you're getting more event data ported back into your internal tools for, it kind of depends on what, right? That flexibility piece. I think we're probably seeing this more around analytics and kind of ad impressions right now, but there's different options on what we can do for that.
Yeah, this was when we released this, we had quite a few customers quite excited because they already had internal tools that were built out or internal identity kind of systems and logs already created. So what we were able to do is quickly configure and use one of these syncs, and I say one of because we have 5 different kind of methods, and I'll show you here in a second in the UI, that allows you to go and grab IDs the way that you are setting and moving IDs around. So for one of the examples, they had an ID API, and we were able to use our fetch method, which essentially just goes, hits that endpoint, pulls back those IDs, and now it includes that as part of your overall MetaRouter payload. Similarly, Michelle mentioned we've got customers that have their own ad servers, so that ad server has its own ID. So what we were able to do is we use our match method. So they have a matching table that they store and monitor on their side, and we're able to go and make those exchanges as well. So we have a multitude of methods, and I'd love to just go in and kind of show what this looks like and how the configuration works as well.
Let's do it.
Great. Okay, so I'm in our pipelines section of our product. So a pipeline is essentially the ingestion of data from a particular, maybe one of your websites. And this, I'm using an example of data that might be coming in through a Shopify connection here. So when you're configuring, I'm going to kind of breeze through the configuration of the actual file itself. So this will be the file that lives on your site. We have a section called identity syncs here. So when you want to create a new identity sync, we now have this custom integration, custom identity syncs option here in the dropdown. So when I hit that, my next option is to select the identity sync. And so we have a fetch, first-party cookie, local storage, match pixels, and URL parameters. So these are all the different ways and methods that we're able to go and collect IDs and then include those in that payload that then is going to get pushed down throughout the entire MetaRouter data lifecycle. So let me just go. So if I'm selecting fetch, so this is that one I was saying with our customer that has the identity API. We're able to just go to that URL and go and collect those. These are all the parameters that you need to configure. So you just got to provide a name, give us some information about how long that storage success should live for, the storage failure age. You give us that URL of like where we're going to be getting that data from. Just define the actual method here. So a lot of them are going to be a get command, but you might have a service or a system that requires something else. So just make sure you are kind of reviewing some of the documentation for this particular endpoint. And then we have a few other items that you can put in. So once you have these created and configured, you just save this. And then this would get added to the code that's a part of your tag. And then that gets put on the site, and then we'll perform this fetch sync. Similarly, as you go through these other sync types, so I'll come back and let's have a peek at our local storage. Here, this is if a situation where you, as an enterprise, are going in and you're storing IDs inside of local storage for a multitude of purposes. You just provide us with that storage key. We make sure we give tooltips to just give you a little bit more information about what each of these parameters are. You provide us with that key, and then we can go into local storage and we can extract those IDs and again add that into the overall payload that's going in. So all of these are now part of our entire ID sync. So these are still being run and operated by our sync injector. We've basically just packaged up all of the different methods that are used in these other identity syncs and then made those available from a shell standpoint. And then you just provide us with the very specific nuanced configuration needs that are for your business and your business only. So, yeah.
Making it look easy. I think what I like is the different methods too. Back to the flexibility efficiency piece is like, we do make it easy to figure out with all those different options to really bring it together.
And we actually have a 6th method coming relatively soon. So we've identified with one of our customers, they have provided us with a need to do another identity sync method. And so while we build that for them, we're also going to build out the shell for that and make that available to all other customers as well.
But who's counting right now?
Exactly.
That's great. So with that, I think we are coming up at Q&A time. So let's see. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to put them in the chat and we're happy to get them answered. Let's see. I think we've got one here. How would my team know when to use the transformation layer? It's a good question.
Yeah, great question. So one is if you have in that one particular answer example, if you've got multiple layers of kind of transformation needs, you've got some filtering needs. Anytime you've got just you feel like your finished product from a data perspective is very different to what you're collecting, that's when a tooling like the Lua modules are going to be incredibly helpful because they're so they're so powerful. You can do so much with them, and then they can apply to any point in your data lifecycle as well. So that's going to be really like a good identifier. It's like, is the data produced versus the data being consumed quite different there? The other way to find out is consult with us. We've got an absolutely rock star customer team that's just seen this time and time again, and they will be able to also help guide and navigate some of the transformation needs and how we can help facilitate that as well. So yeah, those would be my top two. There's plenty of others, but for the sense of time, I'm just going to go with our top two.
Sure. Perfect. I think we got one more. Do you support testing? How can I test and validate these integrations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I kind of touched on this a little bit so from the custom integration standpoint, we kind of known that was going to come down the pipeline. We have some testing capabilities that we've had for a long time in our CLI, but now we have that built out into our UI. So it's very simple. You can go inside of each one of the integrations. There's a testing component. You're able to just go click on that, put in an input event, and then test to see what that output will be. And then ultimately we'll enable the capabilities of you to send that to a downstream tool and get the response back and make sure that that's all working. So especially when we get further down the road from a custom integration standpoint, this tooling is going to be essential for you to make sure that you've configured the integration correctly. We've got the URL input correct. And now I want to see how that data is being transformed. And then is it being accepted by that downstream tool in the way that I need it for my downstream use cases?
Yeah, I think that's maybe an underrated piece that sometimes gets lost. Again, I think I keep going back to that like integration list on a website. Like, does it even work? What is it used for? Is the data properly being put to where it needs to go? Like, I think that's a really underrated piece part of this equation sometimes. So a really nice pre-built or, integrated piece part of this. So
yeah, flexibility is great. Flexibility with guardrails and validation is essential. So that's one of the things that we've been like in providing and delivering these flexible solutions. We have to provide ways for people to be comfortable that the thing that they have gone and configured or we've helped them configure is actually going to work, is actually going to stand up to the scale that we're trying to push through, and then give them the transparency and visibility into that.
I could not have said it better myself. So with that, I think that is all the questions we have today. So if you want to learn more, obviously feel free to reach out to Dylan or myself. I think we're always here at the same main, check out our website, metarouter.io. And we also have some specific information on the summer product release. If you're curious to learn more about them, where to get started, have some use cases you want to talk through with us as well, please let us know. We're always happy to chat through it. Cool. So with that, yeah, thank you all again for joining. Thank you, Dylan. This was really awesome to hear, straight from the product's mouth of what's being built, why, and really what it's doing for our customers. So thank you so much.
Thanks for letting me tag along. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thanks. Have a good one.
See you.